find out what had gone on during the day, what the reporters are covering, where they are, what they're doing. And the producer would have laid out the show in the order that she feels is important, and then we would discuss it. If the lead is an obvious lead, then there's not much discussion. But if there's any room for debate, it's not to suggest, Scott, that it's a committee decision, but there is a lot of input. So while Bob and I don't have any titles as far as editor or whatever you want to call it is concerned, our input is really sought out and listened to, and that's because we're part of the broadcast. We're not just readers, thankfully.
How does the competition edge of the local market, does that have any bearing on the style and writing and stuff, or what's picked for stories and things?
It would be silly to deny that you don't have an eye on what the other guys are doing, but that's it. I think. I think we've got an eye on what they're doing, but we have, again, I'm glad Channel 30 is long since past the days where they would worry what Channel 3 was doing and then run out and do the same thing. We're talking, 5, 6 years ago where that really was the case. But since the days of R.D. Saul and the changeover at Channel 30 to a real competitor-type news operation, they've gone their way. And we have good people, and we do our thing, and they do their thing. And there's not a lot of worry about did we miss something, because 9 times out of 10 we haven't.
Right. Now there's in the past few years, I don't know if you've heard of Ron Powers and his criticisms of local news and stuff. Now he's talked much about this happy talk and the credibilities of local news and such. Now how do you feel that what your station's done to improve that credibility? Now I know you do the catch line as the hour's news in a half hour.
Right.
Now, what other things are you doing to keep the credibility up?
Well, I think that we are really, 30 I think has always been a little on the downbeat side. Not a lot of what is called flash and trash, although we're not above putting on a story that will grab viewers' interest, but not on a regular basis. I think there are a lot of consciences at our place who say, oh, that's really reaching, that's really, really reaching. I think we would just go for the news story and not a lot of glitter and glamour.
How about in terms of, do you think viewers have problems with the credibility of, say, a Rather or a Brokaw? Because, to give you an example, like that videotape story of the top officials of the government involved with I believe the Vicki Morgan thing. Now, all of them jumped on that story the night it happened, and then, days later it turns into nothing. Do you think incidents like that hurt their credibility?
That's a real good question. It really is, and I'm not so sure I have the answer. Naturally, hindsight is 20/20, and Brokaw or Rather or any of the news directors and producers at the networks would say, geez, I wish we had stayed off that Vicki Morgan thing. That was really a bummer. But who can say that? The idea is to say that, at the time, it takes a lot of courage to walk away from a, you'll forgive the expression, sexy story like that. It's very difficult to pass that up because, and I've heard this more than once, and I think it is partially valid, what are people talking about? And it's this constant fight of substance over interest. And I was just reading an article about Roone Arledge saying something like when the Iranian hostage crisis happened, ABC wasn't doing a nightly show yet, the 11:30 show that eventually became Nightline. And he came in and said, why aren't we doing a show tonight? And they said, well, nothing happened. And he said, but everybody I met today is talking about the hostages. Let's get something on. You see that and hear that constantly as a rationale that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't.
Now, do you think their move towards hour-long or longer newscasts can help them in terms of, getting a little more credible? Because I know when they say they have only 2 minutes to do a story in, as opposed to, the cable news operations, they can spend a minute now and then in an hour spend another couple minutes on it.
Well, I think I've read somewhere, I don't know who to attribute it to, but the idea that it's not the local affiliate that needs an hour's news, it's the network that does. And of course, naturally, being at Channel 30, we're going to agree with that. I mean, we managed to do our thing in half an hour, and I don't think anybody loses out on anything. I think if you watch the other two, while I always enjoyed the hour newscast, I never was really very critical of it. If you take it apart story by story and see what exactly you're getting in an hour, I don't think you're really
Now, do you think
getting that much. I think
television-
to answer your question, I think the network definitely deserves an hour, more so than we
Do you
do.
think the dependence on the visual for television news causes problems too in that area? Because you know, for instance, there was a big hullabaloo about the unemployed man who lit himself on fire.
Yeah.
You know, there's a problem in a journalist standing there and taking a shot.
But
and
that's
thinking,
stupidity, Scott.
Yeah.
That's absolute stupidity, in my opinion. I mean, again, very self-righteously after the fact, everybody at our place said, oh, we would never have done that. And I really don't believe we would. I mean, there is a fine line, and unfortunately, that particular photography crew stepped over it. And I'm sure, again, their hindsight is 20/20 now, and they would never do that again. But I don't think we'd even go out on the call, frankly, and I don't think any of the other guys in this market would either. I think that was just foolishness.
Now, talking more about the news team at Channel 30, how what do you like best about working with that group, the you know, interplay, and you know, what kind of dialogue exists between you and the other reporters that are out on stories and stuff, so that you can be up on things?
Yeah, it's real good. That's what I like. I think they make a lot of the fact that there are plenty of egos to go around in television, and there's no doubt about it. But I think at our place, a lot of our people are very, very low-key. And they're not, I've said this before in a promo that we did on Channel 30, but I really believe it's true. Our guys are not really, guys and girls, are not really into being on TV as much as they are getting the news out. So it's easy to relate to them about the story. They're not so much concerned about what's my presence in the story. It's what's the story about. And I also said, and I mean it, the news really is the star. And I think we've got guys, who at our place who are much more interested in the news approach and how the story gets on the air than if they made a big splash for themselves. So it consequently makes it very easy to relate to them.
So did it take you long to adjust to working with them? Or?
No.
Not at all.
You know why? Because really, we skipped over this briefly, but when I went over there to do those Today Show cut-ins, I would do my 7:25 and 8:25, and then ordinarily I could leave. But if I didn't leave, I would either be asked to stay on and fill in a reporter shift or do something during the day. Consequently, I was one of the guys, and that year and a half of being one of the guys, I think, has stood me in good stead. My promotion to the nighttime anchor spot looked as though, and it was partially true, that I was coming out of the ranks of reporter into the anchor spot. And I think everybody felt real good about that because I was kind of one of them going into the anchor job. And I think that made it a lot easier to relate.
Okay, well, we'll get to talk a little more about the glamour of television news right after this short break. I'm Scott Barnett. We're back at Spotlight On with Joanne Nesti, and we were just talking about television news, and I wanted to move into the area of the glamour problem that they've just recently has come up in the news
Indeed, a problem.
with women. Now, recently, even in local papers we've read where people are complaining that Channel 30 is using a Barbie doll look for you. Now, how do you answer to that?
You know, with all this Christine Kraft stuff, I just got a call from the Hartford Courant this week talking about all of that, and the reference to the thing. There was a letter to the editor, in case the viewers aren't familiar with it, a lady complaining about how Channel 30 had taken me and metamorphosed me somehow, and that's just plainly not true. I freely admit that when I was in radio, you know, I washed my hair every day, blow dried it, and that was it, and I put on my clothes and I went to work. Now, it's a little different. You do not want to see Joe Blow get up on a TV set and do the news in cutoffs and a T-shirt, obviously. You're coming into people's homes. It's important to look good, not outrageously good. I don't believe in the approach that would say that you have to look like a model. I just think you should look professional. I think what Channel 30 has done is nothing compared to perhaps what other stations do.
Well, in terms, you would think that they have the right, or your producers and your directors have the right to say, you know, you should look as good as Bob, and Bob should look as good as you, but not one or the other. And I think in the Kraft case, where, you know, she eventually won the $500,000 settlement, made, you know, the problem was they weren't putting the same pressures on the guys there.
True.
Now, do you think her decision there will change any of the attitudes towards women in broadcasting? Because there's a recent article in TV Guide even about this problem.
It may. I know some of the reaction to the suit has been, well, if it focuses more on the journalistic abilities of women and less on their appearance, all well and good. But see, my opinion of this whole thing, as I again have told others, is that had it been me, I would have gone quietly, and I don't think I would have raised a fuss. As irksome as it is to think that you've been done in by a consultant, and don't get me started on the subject of consultants, but truly I think that's the villain here. The villain of the piece is not the fact that a general manager of a station has a right to say, you're just not what we want. That is his or her right, and I hope Kraft is not saying that it's not. I don't think she is. But she was done in by fairly flimsy things, fairly flimsy factors, dealing with a calendar of her bracelets or, you know, all that nonsense. And that, I think, is slightly aggravating.
Now, you mentioned consultants. Now, I wanted to ask you if you felt, you know, research like her, she even said that they said at one point when people turn on the dial and see your face, they change the station. Okay, now, what do you think about the kind of media consultants and the research that comes up that are looking for little things like, do they like her blouse, do they like this, you know?
We have discussed this at the station, and I guess we're all of the same mind that it seems to our untrained eye, as far as consultants are concerned, having never been one, I don't know, it seems that they take a preconceived notion and take every TV station that they go to and try to make it exactly the same. That's a homogenization that I don't think we need. I think we need to be individualistic, and if I'm right for Hartford, Connecticut, and I hope I am, if I don't play in Chicago, that's okay. I mean, I'm here. I don't worry about that. And I don't know that Chicago has to be Hartford or Boston must be New York or whatever. There should be some kind of reflection of the community in the anchors that give the news.
Right, and you know, one of the things mentioned in the TV Guide article, I'm not sure if it was Jessica Savage that said it, but it's about time that we stop being such a big story, you know, that women in the news, you know, wouldn't you rather have it be where, you know, it's taken for granted that there will be a guy and a girl there, or a guy or a girl. You know.
I hate it when news people become the news, too. That's not our business.
Well, how soon do you feel there might be the female Den, rather, or such?
I don't know. I keep reading about Connie Chung as, you know, the one in the on-deck circle. You know, she's going to knock them all out of the park, but I don't know. I just don't know. I've never seen Connie Chung, to tell you the truth, do her thing, so I don't know if there's anything really yet to be too concerned about. Rather's not going anywhere, Brokaw is not going anywhere, and Peter Jennings is not going anywhere. I mean, they're all pretty well secure. They're only about 50 years old. They have at least another decade, if not more, of doing their thing, and that's fine by me. I think they're all great.
Now, what about your personal aspirations in the business? Where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I never really give it much thought. I am with Channel 30 for the next 3 years. I have a contract, as most of us do, and that'll take me to October of 1985, so it's hard to see beyond that. I've said before, and I still feel that way, that the nicest thing that could happen is if they wanted to come to me in October of 1985 and say, stay. As I sit here right now, I'd probably say, fine. But as I mentioned to you before, I do like radio very much, and who knows? You know, I might just even think about exploring that option.
Now, how since you're from the local area, how have your friends and relatives reacted to your success?
Real well. That's a real treat, I must say.
I've been yet?
Not hardly, no. But I've been really lucky to not have, you know, broadcasting is such a nomadic existence. People have had to go far and wide to get jobs. I'm just very grateful that I never had to stray too far from home. And
now, do you spend much time in the area, you know, back in the area doing things for groups?
Yeah,
and such?
all of my family is here, for one thing. My mother, brother, and sister all live in Wallingford. and I come back occasionally. I'm not real oriented, I guess, as I think you mean, toward the community itself. I live in Haddam, and I do one thing in Wethersfield every week, volunteer for what is called the Connecticut Radio Information Service, which reads for the blind. And that was the byproduct of having done a story on it. They recruited me as a volunteer, and it's a real great operation.
Now, one last question. What kind of advice would you give to budding journalists in the business or trying to get in?
Well, the joke is don't, but the truth is liberal arts education. I truly feel very strongly about that, and I don't think a journalism school or this communications business that they're cranking out now, communications degrees, I'd rather have somebody know history, geography,
Anything
English.
you'd like to change so far? Anything you'd change in Joanne Nesti's career so far?
Oh, no. Boy, I've been the luckiest person I've ever met.
Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show and giving
pleasure,
us our inaugural show here on Spotlight On. And thanks a lot. And good luck to you in the business, and hope you keep breaking barriers all the way.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for watching Spotlight On. My name is Scott Barnett, and we'll be back next month with another person of local interest to your area. Thank you.